In the last 72 hours, a swift U.S. military operation in Venezuela culminated in the capture of President Nicolás Maduro. Washington speaks of restoring democracy, but the broadcasts are secondary. The primary event, the forcible removal of a sovereign leader by a foreign power, has sent a signal far beyond the Caribbean. The question is not whether this was right or wrong. The critical question for the future is, what precedent has just been set? This is not about one man. It is about the rules of international conduct, which may have just been rewritten. For decades, Washington viewed Latin America as its backyard, where its actions had limited global consequences. That assumption is now dangerously outdated. In an interconnected world, there are no regional actions. Every move is a global signal watched and decoded by all major and aspiring powers. Powers like China and Russia don't base their strategic calculations on speeches. They watch actions. They look for new thresholds of what is permissible. The unilateral removal of a head of state is one of the most significant thresholds to cross. It signals that the fragile consensus on sovereignty, which has been the bedrock of the international system since the Treaty of Westphalia, may now be functionally obsolete when it conflicts with the interests of a great power. This operation is consistent with Donald Trump's strategic logic. His foreign policy is a performance of unpredictability, a deliberate disruption of established norms. The goal is to keep adversaries off balance by showing a willingness to do what others won't. It is a core component of his America First doctrine, where national interest overrides international convention. This action serves as the ultimate example of that doctrine in practice. Publicly, the justification is humanitarian. Strategically, the signal is one of resolve. The message to rivals is clear. We will act, not just threaten, at a time and place of our choosing, without permission. This is not about building a new world order. It is about demonstrating that in the current one, American power remains the final arbiter, and that its patience for drawn-out diplomatic processes is limited. This is where the analysis becomes most critical. The ripple effects will not be immediate, but they will be structural. First, China and Taiwan. Conventional wisdom suggests this diters Beijing, showing American resolve. A contrarian and perhaps more realistic view is that Beijing sees a window of opportunity. With the U.S. potentially bogged down in a Venezuelan stabilization effort, and having set a precedent for breaking sovereignty, China may feel it has a freer hand in its own sphere of influence. The precedent cuts both ways. It simultaneously demonstrates U.S. capability and undermines the very principle Washington would need to credibly condemn a Chinese move on Taiwan. Next, Russia and Ukraine. This action confirms Vladimir Putin's long-held belief that international law is a tool of the powerful, not a genuine constraint. It validates his narrative both domestically and to his allies that the West operates by the law of the jungle. This may not mean immediate escalation in Ukraine, but it encourages long-term assertiveness. It reinforces his view that the only real check on ambition is countervailing force, and that diplomatic protests from the West are performative. Finally, the Global South. For non-aligned nations, the principle of sovereignty has been their primary shield against great power intervention. That shield now looks much weaker. We can expect a quiet but urgent reassessment of alliances. Some may drift closer to China or Russia, seeking a patron to protect them from a newly assertive United States. Others may conclude that the only true security lies in acquiring their own deterrence, potentially sparking regional arms races. The price of non-alignment has just increased significantly. The central argument is this: we are accelerating into a post-rules world. This is not the structured, bipolar standoff of the Cold War, nor is it the aspirational, rules-based order of the 1990s. It is a return to a much older game, classic 19th century power politics, where leverage matters more than laws, and spheres of influence are carved out by force, not by consensus. This does not mean global chaos erupts tomorrow. The system has inertia, but it does mean that uncertainty is now the baseline. The guardrails are off. The potential for miscalculation by all actors has increased significantly. So, what are the realistic scenarios over the next 12 to 24 months? I offer 3, based on probabilities, not predictions. Scenario 1. Low escalation. The world condemns, but ultimately absorbs the event. Other powers test boundaries cautiously, through proxies or cyberattacks, but avoid direct confrontation. Business, for the most part, continues. This is the most likely scenario with a probability of around 60%. Scenario 2. Medium escalation. We see a tit-for-tat response. A U.S. ally finds itself under sudden, intense pressure from a rival power. An economic asset is seized, or a diplomatic outpost is closed. The goal is not war, but to impose a cost and re-establish deterrence, to signal that such actions do not come for free. I would place this at a 30% probability. Scenario 3. High escalation. A major power concludes that this is a green light. They undertake a similar, overt military action against a neighbor, calculating the U.S. has lost the moral high ground to object. This leads to a direct great power standoff, where diplomacy is sidelined and military posture becomes the primary form of communication. The probability is low, perhaps 10%, but it is no longer zero. In the coming weeks, the headlines will be dominated by the fallout in Venezuela itself. That is the human story, but it is not the strategic one. The most important changes are slower, quieter, and structural. When interpreting the news, I would offer this one piece of guidance. Pay less attention to the justifications and more to the capabilities being demonstrated. Power is not what you say. It is what you can do and what you have proven you are willing to do. The world did not become more dangerous overnight, but it has become more uncertain. Navigating that uncertainty with calm analysis, not emotional reaction, is the central challenge of our time.